My name is Kelly Sears. I am at Jurassic from Denver, Colorado. I would identify as an experimental animator, and my animation practice might be different than what people typically think of as an animation practice. I don't draw anything, but I collect source material, often print material. You can see some of the material I'm working with here, old Air Force reconnaissance guides. And I think of ways how to collage them into time-based work. I use animation to collage and composite and layer different kinds of images. For me, I like the idea of responding to something that's already out there. A lot of my work deals with questions of military power, occupation, surveillance. And so it's a means for me to engage with these images, and by engaging with those images, work with the history that's in those images. I think it works. My animation practice is a very critical one. I think about these are different ways to, by cutting into the image, intervening with the histories around it. It's a form of critique for me. I can use these images that we read as very products of American military power, but I can subvert those narratives in the films that I work with. I've been building these animated compositions, and they, you kind of jump into them, and they have multiple layers and masking within each layer of frame by frame, masking out different images. So the hand building these mats within here, and then compositing it into this kind of fantastic military instructional film that I'm making that is vaguely science fiction about predictive reconnaissance, which is a project that's being worked on right now by our military. It's been such a treat, such a gift to be here. Animation isn't for the faint of heart. It's a very labor-intensive process. If I get a couple of seconds done a day, that's great. I'm excited about that. But in order to stay in that place, you need to have huge stretches of time to start a process, to mess it up, to figure out why it's messed up, and to stay there. So to have huge chunks of a day is not normally how I make work. So for me, I can come up early in the morning, animate, take a walk. Animation also involves sitting down a lot, so it's nice to have a beautiful place to stroll in between big hour sessions of work. And so to have 3 weeks of back-to-back work has been extraordinarily productive. And then when I'm not working here, the dinners with all the other artists have just been phenomenal. Talking with writers and composers and other visual artists has been a very inspiring part of this residency for me.
My name is Candido, and I'm from Madison, Wisconsin. I'm interested in, social justice and ways in which ideas of punishment and resistance have evolved historically and culturally. It's actually a poem that I wrote here at Jurassic. To save one animal from sickness, it is necessary to sacrifice another. I know a woman who wanted to cure her husband's flight so much that she strapped a condor to her back. Naked in the quemadero, she thrashed. Now her struggle is a retablo. The viewer cannot tell wing from arm. There are other secrets, they say, she guarded with her body. One who pit barbecued the head of a cow. Another who crushed cocoa leaves between her breasts and danced cumbia. To save one animal from sickness, it is necessary to know which. There is fear at first of the tree line, of the blood's quick ascent. Melded into a bell, the fat of each animal makes a new music.
I'm Vivenne Glance, and I'm from all over, but the last place I've lived is Perth, Western Australia. Because a lot of the writing that I do is informed by science and how science intersects with society, and about how people, how different worlds revolve around the practice of science, and how art can be used in some ways to interrogate that, to question the pull and push of science in society, which is mainly that. Mainly the reason I do that is because I trained initially as a scientist. I mean, we're here in this wonderful natural environment, but science is everywhere still. We've got the telegraph lines, you know, we've got the electricity, we've got electric lights, we've got cars, we've got sort of man-made equipment and everything. So technology and science have imposed themselves even here, even though we'd like to see the nature around us first. And it's those kind of questions where these things butt up together that's really interesting to me. It's called What the Plum Trees Were Doing. What the plum trees were doing as the evening slowed and night tentatively nudged her way in. What they were doing as the cat scratched up the trunk, spooked by headlights and the rustling breeze. What they were doing as you closed the door and left an open O of yourself in the room. The plum trees were sucking up moist earth and moulding that day's sunlight into purple and green, knitting together molecules into sweet sap, cell by cell sowing leaves and rippled bark. The plum trees were doing what they have always done, even when cats scratch, days end, people mourn. And tomorrow, I will fill a pan with ripe plums, split their juices free, and make purple wine.
My name is Michelle LaMarca, and I currently live in Minot, North Dakota. I am primarily a fiction writer, focusing on young adult fiction, so I write for teenagers. So I'm very interested in those formative years and how you come out of that. So sort of the untraditional coming of age and that search for identity, but also the resistance of applying labels to herself and how those two forces work against each other. Aside from that, I just like to make stuff up and tell stories. So that inspires me. I'll read the first page from the prologue of the novel that I started working on just before I came to Jurassic the first time for the workshop and is now completed. So actually I've done quite a bit of work on this while I've been here. Trichotillomania. I remember the first time the doctor said the word to Mom and me. He handed her a pamphlet which explained the disorder as though that would stop it. At the time, I had exactly 5 noticeable bald spots and several more patches of thinned out hair. He said it slow, trichotillomania. It sounded like a made-up word, like something that didn't really exist, even if my bald spots were proof that it did. Then again, even though I sat there full of flesh and bones, I felt made up too. I wasn't a real girl anymore. I'd pulled too much of myself away. Pick a strand, pull, my new favorite game. I wasn't sure what it meant to exist, but I knew I wasn't doing it right.